Separation of powers refers to the division of a state's government into branches, each with separate, independent powers and responsibilities, so that the powers of one branch are not in conflict with those of the other branches. The typical division is into three branches: a legislature, an executive, and a judiciary, which is the trias politica model. It can be contrasted with the fusion of powers in parliamentary and semi-presidential systems, where the executive and legislative branches overlap. The intention behind a system of separated powers is to prevent the concentration of power by providing for checks and balances. The separation of powers model is often imprecisely and metonymically used interchangeably with the trias politica principle. While the trias politica model is a common type of separation, there are governments that have more or fewer than three branches. Aristotle first mentioned the idea of a mixed government, or hybrid government in his work Politics, where he drew upon many of the constitutional forms in the city-states of ancient Greece. In the Roman Republic, the Roman Senate, consuls and the assemblies showed an example of a mixed government according to Polybius. It was Polybius who described and explained the system of checks and balances in detail, crediting Lycurgus of Sparta with the first government of this kind. John Calvin favored a system of government that divided political power between democracy and aristocracy. Calvin appreciated the advantages of democracy, stating, "It is an invaluable gift if God allows a people to elect its own government and magistrates." In order to reduce the danger of misuse of political power, Calvin suggested setting up several political institutions that should complement and control each other in a system of checks and balances. In this way, Calvin and his followers resisted political absolutism and furthered the growth of democracy. Calvin aimed to protect the rights and the well-being of ordinary people. In 1620, a group of English separatist Congregationalists and Anglicans, Connecticut, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania had similar constitutions. They all separated political powers. Books like William Bradford's of Plymouth Plantation, on the one hand, and the executive and federative power, responsible for the protection of the country and prerogative of the monarch, on the other hand, as the Kingdom of England had no written constitution. During the English Civil War, the parliamentarians viewed the English system of government as composed of three branches: the King, the House of Lords and the House of Commons, where the first should have executive powers only, and the latter two legislative powers. One of the first documents proposing a tripartite system of separation of powers was the Instrument of Government, written by the English General John Lambert in 1653, and soon adopted as the Constitution of England for few years during the Protectorate. The system comprised a legislative branch and two executive branches, the English Council of State and the Lord Protector, all being elected and having checks upon each other. A further development in English thought was the idea that the judicial powers should be separated from the executive branch. This followed the use of the juridical system by the Crown to prosecute opposition leaders. Following the Restoration, in the late years of Charles II and during the short reign of James II, the first constitutional document to establish the principle of the separation of powers in government between the legislative, executive, and judiciary branches were Pacts and Constitutions of Rights and Freedoms of the Zaporizhian Host, written in 1710 by Ukrainian hetman Palap Olik. An earlier foreigner to Montesquieu's tripartite system was articulated by John Locke in his work, Two Treatises of Government. Locke further distinguished federative power, which entailed the power of war and peace, leagues and alliances, and all transactions with all persons and communities without the Commonwealth, or what is now known as foreign policy. Locke distinguishes between separate powers but not discretely separate institutions, and notes that one body or person can share in two or more of the powers. For instance, Locke noted that while the executive and federative powers are different, they are often combined in a single institution. Locke believed that the legislative power was supreme over the executive and federative powers, which are subordinate. Locke reasoned that the legislative was supreme because it has law-giving authority, or what can give laws to another. must needs be superior to him. According to Locke, legislative power derives its authority from the people, who have the right to make and unmake the legislature. And when the people have said we will submit to rules, and be governed by laws made by such men, nobody else can say other men shall make laws for them, nor can the p.